Welcome to Split the Difference, where we try to have controversial conversations amongst two people with different viewpoints to try to see if we can find some common ground of some sort. I'm Nelson. I've been doing YouTube for about a year now. I'm a reactor. Yep, I'm one of those guys. I have a channel called Thoughts of a Predicate Winner. And in the midst of this channel and making videos for this channel, me and my friend Dylan started talking about maybe we should do a podcast. And here we are.
Yeah, my name's Dylan. I think there's a big problem with a lot of the conversations that are had online these days, and a lot of the conversations we've had in person. We both work in industries where you talk to a lot of people every day, and obviously you run into a lot of people with different points of view. And I think oftentimes you get trapped when you're having a controversial conversation, whether it be politics, religion, or any other controversial topic, where people think, oh, this guy's going to try to dunk on me if I say the wrong thing, or he's going to own me or he's going to hate me if I think the wrong thing. And I think we've just had really good conversations in the past where we can make concessions with each other. We won't try to shit on each other if we say the wrong thing. Should we cuss?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how it works if we're going to get demonetized or whatever. Not that we have any money to worry about yet.
We don't have to worry about that yet.
But yeah, I think it's a huge problem. And people make politics so much of a core part of their identity, where if you debunk one fact that they believe that is wrong, then suddenly you're attacking them as a person. And it becomes this huge problem where now it's so stigmatized where, people are worried that they're going to lose friendships and lose family and whatever just by having a political conversation or by disagreeing on the fact of the matter of something that might be going on.
On the flip side of that, there's actually family members that are looking to disconnect from family and friends because of an opposing. So in the same, I feel the same way. I just feel like we got to find some kind of common ground, somewhere to meet in the middle, or we're doomed as a society.
Yeah, we're just too separate. And in that vein, we've decided to talk. We're going to start light because Nelson's other channel, as he said, he reacts to music. So we're going to start sort of on the same note as that. We're going to talk about effects of music and culture. We're going to take the nice, logical, little leap from music to abortion. And then if we've got some time, what else was it? I think those will carry us over probably for a good hour, but I've got another list of topics in case. Mask mandates was the other one, which is kind of a cold topic, but just for a little bit of background, I am an atheist liberal snowflake, self-proclaimed, and Nelson, if you want to describe what you identify as.
I'm he, him, the one and only.
Very brave.
I'm, right. I'm, how do I describe myself? I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. And we're taught in churches, and we're in the American church, we're taught that, in most churches, that means that you need to lean conservative. I believe that I do lean conservative on a lot of issues, but I also find myself in a hard place sometimes because I also lean left on quite a few issues as well, which, we'll get to over the course of time. But for the sake of the introduction, we don't need to get into all the specifics of it. But I definitely feel like as somebody that doesn't necessarily feel like I'm on a team, that I see a lot of danger in the way people tend to have this team ideology, and it's really become a passion of mine, even through my music channel and doing music reactions, to try to help steer people away from that team set mentality. And I mean, music speaks, you know what I mean? Music speaks, and I think that music is powerful. I think it's an instrument, and I think that we can, that's my passion, is trying to figure out a way through music to help people see the lens that I see the world through. And
I think that's a good segue into our first topic, where immediately being a conservative, you wouldn't think, and I think you're primarily focused on rap music, right? Or okay, so I think most people would assume that as a conservative, you're probably not focused on rap music and would have something to say about that. Mike, I have a couple of questions. First, I didn't watch the video because I wanted to just talk to you about it. I saw you had some thoughts on separating the art from the artist. People talk about like Kanye, Michael Jackson, stuff like that. What are your thoughts? Do you think you can separate the music from the artist? Do you think
I think to a degree you can. I think that like specifically, like let's start with Michael Jackson. That's about the earliest that I can remember ever feeling to myself like, man, I really love this guy's music, but wow, you know what I mean? And I learned from that age, just kind of on my own accord, I feel like that if you love the music, it is its own entity. And for instance, like Michael Jackson didn't write a lot of his music, right? He's a pop artist. There's a whole team of writers. There's a whole team of producers. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the making of this music. So I learned from a very young age that I didn't want to say, all right, I cannot listen to this music anymore because of the way this artist acts or because of the way that this artist portrays himself. And that was the easy one. Michael Jackson was a pretty easy one because his music is super fire, and he hasn't done anything that's that over the edge. If you don't believe that he, touched on kids, if you believe he touched on kids, that's pretty over the edge. But when you get into you try to do that as much as you can, and Kanye West is probably my favorite all-around artist of all time. And once you start getting into the Kanye West of the world, it gets a little bit more tricky, to be honest with you, because the art is great. Specifically with Kanye, I love his art, love his artistry, but sometimes the artist can be louder than the art, and that's when it becomes tricky to me.
That's my question then, is would you ever... I know things have changed, obviously, in the music industry where instead of going to the shop and buying an album and you're basically directly putting money into that person's pocket, you're buying something, you're subscribing on Spotify or whatever it might be. So your support, instead of, the $10 for an album is, cents on the dollar for listening to something. But would you still, listen to some of Kanye if he came out with some new music? Would you listen to it on Spotify knowing that you're like giving this guy who basically spent, and I guess not to be political about it, but spent a long time obviously spewing hate on the internet and trying to divide people?
I would have to say that I would, because I also feel like in the same way that it depends on how you look at art, and every once in a while you find these artists that are just very much really them, and it's something to be appreciated, like a 50 Cent, for instance, where you can pretty much bank on it. If he said it happened, or it's gonna happen. There's specific artists out there like that, and then there's storytellers, and there's so many different types when we're talking about music specifically. But if we're like, it gets into the bag of like, all right, if I'm listening to it because this song resonates with me, it relates to me, even if everything that this person has said or done doesn't. And that's why I kind of try to look at the art as its own entity, because even in the midst of, like, let's say movies, you know what I'm saying, where Heath Ledger plays the Joker, and you love his performance, you think that it was great, you love that movie, it's one of your favorite movies of all time, rest in peace to Heath Ledger. But let's say that Heath Ledger came out and did something sporadically ridiculous during that time frame, which is very probable and possible because he was completely just dialed in and locked in on being that character, right? So during that time frame, I mean, I think it pretty much led to his own fate and destruction. But if he would have enacted something on somebody else, would that make you appreciate that movie any less?
I don't think for me it wouldn't, but I think there's a difference between being able to appreciate that piece of content and continuing to support them, even like financially going forward, just knowing that the kind of person they are, which I guess, I mean,
that's a good point.
Depending on what they've done, obviously it makes a difference, but it's the whole capitalism thing. Like, if people are putting that out there, I don't think they should deserve a level of support. Obviously, unless you agree with them, in which case, go off and fucking send them as much money as you want, right?
That gets difficult for me too, man, because when did we start that? When did we start doing, all right, now, and I wish, truth be told, if I could speak to any artist, if I could talk to all artists out there, let me give you a blueprint to follow. The Weeknd doesn't do interviews. He doesn't talk online. He doesn't say anything on Twitter. And because of that, he has a mystique about him. And it leaves people wondering, wanting more. Like, I want to know more about what The Weeknd thinks. So what do? They dive into the music. They dive into the art. And that's what I meant in the beginning aspect of this conversation, where I'm talking about how sometimes the artist gets louder than the art itself. And when they get louder than the art, you kind of start turning people off of the art anyway, because now there's nothing even for me to hear in the art. I do miss the days when artists were a lot more, there was just a mystique, there was a mystery about them. And now that artists are so prominent online and on social media, I feel like a lot of times they do themselves way more harm than good as it is. For instance, I talk a lot on my channel about this white rapper named Tom MacDonald, who has done a lot of harm to his reputation in terms of the way the world might see him. Now, his fan base is crazy. It's huge. And I like his music a lot. But he's put himself in this category amongst the world, where the world's going to see him as this MAGA rapper, which I've talked about on my channel multiple times. Like, that's his outlook. If you ask what the hip hop community and hip hop culture thinks about Tom MacDonald, who makes hip hop music, they're gonna say that's a MAGA rapper. That was what I initially heard about Tom MacDonald. And then I started to dive into his music, and he's much more than that, but which one speaks louder? You know what I'm saying? Whereas I can appreciate his music and appreciate his art. Does his artist speak louder than the art?
So,
I don't know.
If someone walked in and, they pulled out their AirPods and I could hear they were listening to Tom MacDonald, would you blame someone for immediately, like, in a sense, profiling that person, knowing that that's what they're listening to?
Yeah, I think that's crazy. That's judgmental. Well, because
in the same way that if someone walked in listening to Kanye, I would be like, really, man, still?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it depends, bro, because, like, I don't know. I look back on, like, Eminem in the early 2000s. That's a good example of this, where, like, they called him homophobic. He was literally getting canceled by Congress before cancel culture was even a thing. Like, I can't remember her name, man. Either way, like, there were so many people that were literally in office that were trying to cancel him and say, like, we cannot allow this record on the street. Which at that point in time in the early 2000s, people were kind of in unison, feeling like that's impeding on people's free speech. He does have the right to say whatever he wants to say, and if people want to support it, they can. Now, the reason that I bring that up is because he played a character. Like, on that album specifically, that was him kind of diving into a characteristic. And what a lot of artists do is they split it into a different, like an alter ego. So you would call that part of him Slim Shady, where you would call the more mature version of him Marshall Mathers. And to me, we have to be careful with that, man, because what it is, the way that I see music, like I said, if it's real and that person is really 100% them and that's who they say they are in the music, then, that's I could probably name maybe 4 or 5 people like that. But I look at it as there's this blank canvas and this man is painting on it whatever he wants to paint. You can either rock with it or you can move on. The good thing about Eminem is he's not loud. So his art, his artist doesn't outshine his art.
Yeah, it's just hard, man, because everything has become so intertwined with the internet these days, where everything is political.
That is true.
Where and I forgot to mention it at the start, but the thing that really made me think to talk about this, which I don't necessarily have the strongest stance on this, is the reactions to Taylor Swift's new album, where on one hand you have the left or some people on the left that are saying, oh my God, Taylor Swift has gone has gone MAGA, she's saying all these things that are, leaning to the right or whatever. Yeah. But then, I'm watching like clips from people on Fox News where they're talking about how she's like talking about devil worship or like how it's overly sexual. So she must be like, playing to her left base. And I'm like, how can two groups listen to this and think completely opposite things, right? So like on one hand, as an artist, like, I can imagine some people would want to speak out and be like, no, listen, it wasn't either of those, or it was one of those maybe. Like, it's just crazy.
No, I do. I agree. I agree with that. The artist, and sometimes the artist might come out and just be like, you know what, it wasn't either one of those things, or whatever. I think that brings up an interesting point about music, though, right? This is the one thing that I've seen from both sides overall. Taylor Swift's new album is trash. That's what I've seen everybody say, right? So if that's the case, that's what happens. Like if your music is trash, I've seen the same thing with Kanye. I got two little girls that, I like Taylor Swift. But same thing with Ye. Like when you start to make music that doesn't resonate and you're that prominent of a figure, you're leaving people with no choice. They're not going to talk about the music. If the music isn't good, they're going to start talking about who you are. And whether that's a good or a bad thing matters none to me. I mean, it's really just about like, what is your music like? Because we can have this argument, but if the music is so good that it's undeniable.
Well, here's a question. So, like you said, there's a difference between the art and the artist, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like if I had a friend and he was a really cool guy, but all he wore were swastika shirts. Like, oof. I would never hang out with that guy. It's the same thing with Kanye. Like, if this guy in my ears could be super cool, but as soon as people hear that I'm listening to it, all they see is the big fucking iced out swastika that he was wearing. Like, it makes it unpalatable.
Yeah. Yeah, no. But when his music was great, you didn't see so much of that. You saw him, run up on Taylor Swift on stage when his music was great. And listen, even down to like, I'm not like a Kanye West music hater now. I still think it's all right. But like when your music is great, it changes the perception to where people care less about who you are and more about what you offer. I think that when you begin to offer less, that's when people begin to look into who you are more. And I think that's a dangerous place for a lot of artists, Taylor, Kanye, whoever. Like once you start looking into who this person is, now there's a difference too, to your point, there's a difference between making a few mistakes or like a bad choice and repeatedly being offensive on purpose.
Yeah, making the choice to wear an iced out fucking swastika that's like,
which
huge.
Is crazy, bro. Like, that's, you never, like, and then sell it. And then people are buying it.
He sold it?
Yeah.
How much did he sell it for?
Bro, I don't know. But like he did that, the White Lives Matter shirts, he did all them shirts, bro, with all kinds of crazy stuff.
So this segues to another question I had that I think you've talked about. What effect do you think music has on culture? I know, like, you're what do you call yourself, a Charlie Kirk fan?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a Charlie Kirk fan, and I think Charlie Kirk would say, and I listened to a couple clips on the drive over here, he would say that the black culture in general, in his words, has a bunch of issues where it didn't glorify enough, I don't know what exactly his word was, men and women staying together, and how a lot of the culture seemed to promote this like thug, gangster, whatever lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Do you think would you agree with him that music has an impact on that, or what would you have to say about that?
I think that's a little bit of a yes and a no. All right, so a lot of times, most of the time, the artists that are painting that picture are painting the only picture that they've seen. They're reiterating their life, right? So with what I was saying earlier about how some artists are literally just portraying art, right? When you start getting into the level of like the street level of rap and the street level of hip hop, what you're looking at is you're looking at people, and this is part of what grabbed me at an early age is you're looking at people that are talking about, they're basically holding a mirror up to America and saying, look what you've done. And I felt that when I was a kid in a lot of ways. Now, did I hear the music and say, I want to do these things that they're talking about doing? No. But I did gravitate to their lifestyle, the way they dress, the way that the way, like my dad was in prison whenever I was 10, 11, 12, 13. During that time frame, I found myself kind of applying the codes of what's in hip hop to my life. Just, I guess that kind of replaced him as a father figure during that time frame. And I would, like, for instance, the way I learned to talk to girls, the way that I learned to protect myself, like fight if I need to, or the way that I dressed, the way I carried myself, just as you're going through those stages of change in your life, that's who I gravitated to, was like rappers, right? So, but at the same time, that didn't. It's hard to say, man.
Wouldn't someone? Well, this isn't necessarily my position, but to play devil's advocate, wouldn't someone like Charlie say that in itself is a problem? Where instead of looking to like preachers or fathers or stuff like that you're glorifying these rappers, so people end up looking to them. Where you have like these rappers who I can't think of any off the top of my head where they've like actually killed people or like are getting killed at early ages because they're still engaging in all this crazy shit.
Right. I would agree with that, but the issue is that for a lot of those people, that father isn't prominent anyway. Like, should he be there? Yeah. Is he there? No. So now what?
Well, so don't they have a higher burden now because people look at them instead of their father figures to like betray a better way?
Yes.
And encourage people to live a better lifestyle?
Yes, and I think that a lot of them do over time. I think a lot of rappers, I can name examples. You look at like a 50 Cent came in the game, get literally like, I'm going to get rich or I'm going to die trying. I got shot 9 times in order to get here. The industry blackballed me and shadow banned me before that was really a thing, but like shadow banned me, wouldn't let me get any record deals. Eminem and Dr. Dre signed me. Now I'm stepping into the game. I'm gonna tell you my whole story on this first album. On the second album, I'm gonna talk about the lifestyle that I've lived. But over the course of time, you look up to him and you see that his actions to me, the actions outweigh what's even in, and that's important too, man. If we're going to talk about like going back to the original thing about art versus the artist, if you're going to talk about it in a negative light, I think that I think a light should be shined on when the artist actually overcomes all of these things and starts to win. Like 50 has his own companies. He's big in real estate. He has his own filming company. He's doing crazy things in television, like just crazy network stuff, man. And I think that if I'm giving him as an example because that's who I looked up to when I was a kid, right? So when I'm looking up to him as a kid and I hear Get Rich or Die Trying and I apply a lot of that stuff, a lot of his blueprint, a lot of his code that I learned at that age that I applied to myself, like, the way that you carry yourself. It could have maybe been more detrimental to me if I watched his actions go like even more astray from that, but instead I saw his actions turn the corner and he just got better and better and better, more successful, and overall became a pretty positive image to look at for any youngin. So I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword because it's a double-edged sword because a lot of those kids in the streets need something to relate to, and they have that. But could it? I guess it comes down to the words that you use, like Charlie Kirk, for instance. Who, yes, I would call myself a fan of him because I'm a man of faith and I agree with his morals and faith. But if you're going to talk about, the term he would use would be glorification. Like you're glorifying murder, you're glorifying street violence, where I would say that's not glorification. It's holding a mirror up that shows you this is what's been done to me.
If you're saying, if you're rapping about it and people think you're glorifying it or people are only attracted to those aspects, then it's basically, it might as well be what you're doing, right?
Well, at that point, I think the people that Charlie Kirk would be talking to in that instance, they know what it is. Whereas the little kids like me that were white and 13 years old that thought they were going through it, they might look at it and be like, oh, that's what I need to do. I need to get a gun. I need to do this. And that might be problematic. I don't know what the scale is on like the white school shooters and what they listen to. You know what I mean? I don't know. It would be interesting to find out because kids that are in the streets, like from the street culture, they know what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're taught it.
That's what I would say is, I would just stick with the data personally. That's why I don't have a huge take on it. I've not looked into it.
Yeah.
I would just lean towards whatever the data says. And that's the problem, I think, with a lot of these conversations. And, I've spoken to you about my thoughts about the way Charlie Kirk debates, and people like Steven Crowder, I think, sort of do the same thing, where they try to like ride this line where they talk about emotions, but then as soon as someone gives them pushback, they have a stat for it. So it's like, here's what we should do, and you talk in this prescriptive world where we're talking about, this ideal world, blah, blah, blah. We should have a world where we encourage everyone to be, stay with their significant others and not ever have a single parent household or whatever. But then as soon as someone's like, well, whatever pushback, they just insert this random stat. So
I agree with the sentiment, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can talk about that for a second. Like, I agree with the sentiment, but I also don't think it's right to cast judgment. Like, and I also think that a lot of times the way that they like viciously, you know what I'm saying? It's like a vicious thing. Like, this is what you need to do in your households. Sometimes I wonder, and I could be wrong, but I wonder if they're like trying to meet backlash at the front. I don't know if that's what it is. I don't know these people personally, but like, if you're trying to, like, I prescribe, speaking of description and prescription, I prescribe that whether or not you follow Jesus, Christianity is a good blueprint to live your life. I would prescribe that. I think that it's a good precedent, right? Like, and if that is your code, whether or not you believe in Jesus or not, if that's your code and you believe in it, and you know that if you say, you should be married before you move in together. Let's use that one. So you should be married before you move in together, because if you move in together, you're probably going to have premarital sex, right? Just a simplistic one. So I would prescribe it would be better to wait until marriage. Doesn't mean that I did that, you know what I mean? But I'm just saying, like, I would prescribe it. That would be the best outcome for your relationship if I really believe that with all of my heart. And I know what the backlash is going to be before I even say it. So what I try to do is I try to meet it out front by saying, I know that this is the best way to do it, rather than, so in other words, you're prescribing it as a no rather than prescribing it as a debate. You know what I mean? Like if you know it to, and that doesn't mean that they're right or wrong. I'm just saying that might be why they seem so aggressive in their stances sometimes.
I'd have to think about it more. Like I said, this is not a topic that I've thought a lot about or engaged a lot with.
Yeah.
It's just, it falls along with everything being too political and like people getting canceled for things they posted on Facebook 10 years ago or just now. And I don't know, man. I just fully think that we need to either decide like that everything is in play politically. Like, you can get fired for your job at any given time depending on what you post on Facebook, or you can get fired from your job never for what you post on Facebook. Like, I don't think there's ever gonna be a good middle ground.
I believe it should be never.
Yeah, personally. I mean, for a podcast called Split the Difference, I don't know if there's a difference to be like split there, where our lives have become online, and so now suddenly, because it's like noted and written down somewhere that it's all in play for your bosses to act upon and say like, this represents our company, therefore we have to terminate you because of that, right? But they're kind of right too. Like, they are kind of right that, if I log on to your Facebook, maybe that's a determination.
And I'm wearing a swastika shirt and I work for your company.
And on it says, works for Target or Walmart or whatever. Like, I think you probably should be able to be fired, but maybe the distinction should just be that as long as there's no nothing symbolizing that you work at a particular company, you can be canceled for it.
Yeah, that's... I think, I don't know, that goes back into the Jimmy Kimmel conversation where I feel like, I don't know, we have to kind of, now that situation to me was just dead wrong as it is, but I think that we have to make sure that if moving forward with situations like this, we have to make sure that we are, there's a line that needs to be there between cancel culture and, being fired for your actions.
But what was it? There was one situation where someone like filmed themselves working at Domino's and they like spit in someone's pizza or something. I think that's an obvious,
right.
Get
you gotta
fired,
go.
Whatever. But like, that's if your profile pictures, the first one is you working at Domino's and the second one is you wearing a swastika. I feel like that is.
I think so too.
Do you think that's grounds for termination?
I do, and I wouldn't consider that cancel culture.
I mean, it kind of is though. It's just the most obvious, basic, like, gimme form of cancel culture there is. Because it's obvious you should be fired at that point.
I agree, but it should be split. That there should be a difference between what you're talking about and if I say, for instance, I can talk on this, right? Like I have a YouTube channel. I've tried to put it under a different name so that you can't just type in Nelson Hill, which is probably not as good for the channel. But
I mean, you said your last name. Well, you say your last name. There's your first problem.
But I ultimately don't want the controversial things to be something that could cause issues at my work. It's just kind of commonsensical for me, right? It's like, now, if they see it, I still hold myself accountable and I still make sure that I don't say anything that's over the line just in case of it. But I also feel like you got to protect yourself in certain scenarios too. I mean, if it gets big and it becomes like the craziest thing ever and people are like, oh, we have to get rid of this guy. In my little corner in YouTube, I'll give you an example. In my little corner on YouTube, there's an artist his name is Ryan Upchurch. And he thinks he is like the ultimate independent artist. Like he thinks he's the biggest thing since Elvis. Everybody tends to think that he's like drugged out and, you know, can't stay off of his phone, keeps like on American making videos. Type shit. Yeah, and it's bad, man. But there's this guy named Gotcha Man. And Gotcha Man makes these videos where he essentially, you know, pokes fun at Ryan. And it's hilarious. It is. He's got a hilarious channel. Now, there's these guys that do a podcast called The Four Brothers, and they're Upchurch team, you know, and they were hosting a live, and Gotcha Man comes into the live, and they're talking about one of the guys' daughter was going on a date for the first time. All right, follow me. So his daughter is going on a date for the first time, and he's talking to the chat about it. I would never do that, but you know, whatever. He's talking to the chat about it. Somebody in the chat makes an inappropriate joke about his daughter. He gets a little butthurt about it, rightfully so. I mean, don't talk to me about my daughter in a negative way like that, but you also opened the door for it. You shouldn't have said nothing about it. Now, Gotcha Man enters the chat during this time, so dude's real upset, right? Like, in Gotcha Man, because they have a little bit of a historic back and forth and a little bit of beef or whatever, Gotcha Man's like, look at him, he's triggered. This guy responds immediately with, that's why you got a retarded son, blah, blah, blah. You got a retarded ass son. God has blessed me. God don't bless people like you. And like goes into this whole thing about his son with autism. It was really nasty. Like I can't even find myself like repeating what he said. It was like real derogatory, real crazy thing to say. Now, my point is this group of people is like a big conservative group of people, right? One of them ends up posting this guy's phone number, his wife's phone number, his business name, like all this stuff up there, right? He posts this long laundry list and it was because the other guy that's posting this is an artist and his kid is autistic. So he felt like the need to ride for it. You know what I mean? Now, what the point that I'm trying to make is that number one, I don't think his wife did anything wrong. But number two, I think that this guy deserves what he gets for opening the door. However, I also think, and I think it's okay to believe both, I also think that the people that are trying to cancel him are slight bit hypocritical because they stand against cancel culture so much. Where's the line?
Well, I think cancel culture is a tool to be wielded by whoever is in power at that time politically to punish whoever they disagree with. Like, and the right acting like they're all high and mighty and that they're above it are full of shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So I completely agree. But I think there's a difference in that where this guy is, you know, on the live saying this stuff as his brand. Right. And it makes sense to cancel him versus, you know, little Jimmy, who's like 18 years old working at Domino's, and he says some dumbass shit on the internet, and there's nothing connecting him to Domino's, but some fucking, you know, 30-year-old nerd who's in his basement finds a way to dox the kid, figure out who he is, where he works, all this shit, and like goes through all these extra steps to find a way to cancel him. Whereas, like, I think it makes sense when it's just readily available, and there's like that one step of connection between you and the brand or the company, and they have to get rid of you because you're representing them.
I agree.
I don't. Yeah.
I agree. I know we're supposed to be splitting the difference, but I agree. But the crazy thing about what we're saying right here is, I think that the majority of the conservative leaners would be pissed about what I just said, and they would actually agree with what you just said even more.
No, but that's the problem, which we're getting, I guess, off topic, but it's fine. They disagree on the fact of the matter because they don't think it's good to cancel somebody over saying certain things, because they would agree with them. They would say, oh, if you cancel me because I say that trans people shouldn't be in sports, that's stupid, but it's not. And they try to act like it's because cancel culture is bad, but what they really mean is they think it's stupid because they think saying that trans stuff is bad is acceptable. That's kind of like the switcheroo that I was trying to talk about with like Crowder and Kirk and stuff like that. Where like they try to play these games instead of just like saying, listen, we don't care if you said shit about trans people. It doesn't matter to us. But they hide behind cancel culture is bad.
Right.
Like it's like the thing, and I don't want to talk too much about the video without watching the video, but it was in the black and white with the barbershop with Crowder that you said.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I brought him this video, and I was thinking that it was this great video about this nuanced conversation, but I didn't know who Steven Crowder was. And like, he hits me back. It's like, I don't know, bro. Like this guy, you can tell him what.
I think that it's hard to put words to on short notice. Like, I think there's a lot of people that exist on the internet that have a greater narrative to push, but without looking at all of their work in one as a unit in context, you can't really see it. So like, if you look at this Steven Crowder video where he's chilling with a bunch of black dudes in a barbershop, it looks like he's just having a normal conversation. But in reality, he's a super ultra qualified person to talk about politics, who's researched tons of politics. He can pull all the stats that agree with his point of view out of his head on a moment's notice. And he went to a fucking barbershop with a bunch of random dudes to talk to them about politics.
And they held their own.
Which they did. They did. They were great.
They went crazy. I loved the conversation. I thought it was the greatest piece of content this year, honestly.
But it's telling when he's talking about, well, why do white kids feel scared in black neighborhoods? And then these black dudes are like, I forget what exactly they said, and they're like, oh, well, why do black people feel scared when they're around the cops? And Steven Crowder's like, well, statistically, white people are technically 12 times more likely to die, blah blah blah. And then suddenly it's about the numbers, where 2 seconds ago it was about the feelings, right? Like, and it's that switcheroo that I was talking about that fucks over all these.
It's like professional debate stuff, which is why I don't like debating. I'm not good at that. Like, I'd rather just converse. But in order to have a conversation, you have to go based off of feel.
And to segue to our next topic, it's hard to have a conversation like that without. Like, it's hard to stay in the theoretical, or I was talking to Nelson about prescriptive versus descriptive. Descriptive is like what is reality, and prescriptive is like what you should do. Descriptive is what is, right? What should be, what is. There, yeah. So if we're talking about abortion, like, whether or not we decide that abortion should be okay, it does matter if we're actually killing a person. Like, and it's hard to have this conversation about should we have abortions when the core of the matter can potentially be, should we let 1 million people die a year? Or should we kill 1 million people a year? So it's like, it's really hard.
Well, no, I can pick up because, all right, so with a lot of conservatives, this is why it gets so tricky and why I can't really find myself really like joining one of these teams, bro, because I do lean conservative on a lot of values. However, like you're talking about with descriptive versus prescriptive, I like to be prescriptive, right? Whereas a lot of these guys, like you're saying, will just talk about the stats. But what's wrong, man, is a lot of these women out here specifically, I mean, men matter less in this conversation. I mean, if we're being real.
There's a lot of guys who would disagree with that.
Well, it's the truth, man. But the descriptive, are rather the feeling of these women is my body, my choice. Now, I believe that abortions in totality are wrong. as a man and as a follower of Jesus. I believe that in totality, I think that abortions are wrong. Now, I could attack this like a Steven Crowder would by bringing statistics to the table when you bring up, what if you're
14 and pregnant?
SA'd?
Yeah.
What if you're SA'd? And I can bring up the statistics there, and I can say that's only 0.01% or whatever that number is. It doesn't even matter to me. It's low, though. It's a low percentage. And if that percentage is low, I feel like I won that argument. But I think that a lot of us are getting so laser beam focused on the argument that we're forgetting that there's a problem that needs to be addressed. Now, the problem is, like you said, are we killing someone here or not? And I think that a lot of women probably struggle with that as they think about it.
My real problem, and I mean, it sounds callous, but it's whatever. My problem with abortion is that we just need to find a way to get the fuck over it. Like, but that's the other thing is, can we get over something if it's killing a bunch of people? Like, I just think that the political parties, and obviously I said I identify more with one than the other. The political parties have basically become beacons of like 3 issues, right? It's
correct.
Economy is like obviously grand, whatever, but it's been like trans issues, abortion, and immigration. Yeah. And that's it. And there are so many bigger problems that we have in America. I mean, you see now, like Marjorie Taylor Greene is literally on Twitter talking about how the Republicans have failed their constituents on healthcare. Like, we haven't talked about healthcare other than Trump constantly saying he wants to get rid of the ACA and defund the ACA, which he still hasn't offered a solution for, by the way, which is crazy because whenever there's a new politician, and I've seen it like these local politicians or these primary races that are about to be had for 2026, where the first fucking question that people have for these politicians as they make their new profile is, what do you think about trans stuff? Should abortions be allowed?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many bigger issues that, like, education. How do we fix education? What's a real comprehensive plan to do that? What's a real comprehensive plan to fix healthcare? What's a real comprehensive plan to generate energy going forward that's not just burn more fucking coal and gas? Like, there's so many other complex issues that we're just stuck, though, on this abortion stuff. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, is like, as two people with fundamentally different points of view on it, can we find some maybe like reasonable middle ground where we'd both be comfortable going forward?
Well, my prescription to it as a Christian man would be, and to understand like what I mean by Christian, right? Because I think Christian is, the term Christian has also become another team ideology, right? What I mean by Christian is that I aim in my life to be Christ-like. I fall short every day. Not trying to say that I'm perfect, not trying to say that I'm like Christ, but my aim is to be Christ-like on a daily basis. Now, my prescription to fixing this issue would be that as Christians, if we're the ones that have a problem with abortion, our solution needs to be that we will take the baby. We'll take the babies in. We'll raise those babies as Christians, and that's a win-win all the way around to me. However, it needs to be easier. It needs to be an easier process. There might be a Christian couple out there that would love to adopt another child, but they don't have $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 up front to go, and you get what I'm saying, and to go through that process. Now, where there's a will, there's a way, but there needs to be a will. And the will with Christians needs to be, if that's your fight and that's what you want to stand against, then you need to offer that as a solution. I would like to offer that as a solution. I would like to adopt a baby I would like it to be a more intimate setting than like, ooh, you're trying to do this, so I'm going to do this. That's not what I want. What I would like for myself and my family, me and my wife have talked about adopting a boy because my wife can no longer have children. Now, I would like to meet with the mother that's on the fence, okay, and doesn't know whether she wants to go through with it or not. And I would just like to offer that. I would like to offer that as a solution.
So I think that's super respectable. There is also the issue, like, carrying a baby to term is obviously a huge risk to the mother, right? Not as much as prior, but it does involve, permanent bodily changes and stuff like that can be an issue. So for people that just don't want to carry the baby at all, or just, I guess, for the sake of conversation, like, you would, I'm sure, say that, like, if our country was perfect, but the cost of that was, there's 10 million abortions a year. Right. Like, is that a country that you would want to live in? I guess I've never asked you that question.
Repeat that one more time.
So, if our country is like perfect biometrics, everybody's super happy, we've got great healthcare, all this other stuff, but we have 10 million abortions a year, would you consider our country like a good place?
Would I rather live in that, you mean?
Would you live in it? Would you want your tax money going to support stuff like that?
Well, for me, if everything else is stable, everything else is good, for me as an American citizen in 2025, I would say we can live to fight another day. I can never let go of that. But I also I'm here after it became a legal operation, right? Like, it depends. Like, if I'm 90 years old and I believe in these same principles and I saw where it went left, I might not feel that way. But it's tough, man, because that's who I am. That's my whole. That's my purpose.
So you said you didn't like it when Trump changed his stance on abortion.
I did not.
From being anti-abortion to letting the states handle it, right?
Right.
So I'm fine with so that would be my concession is I think it sucks that the states do it because it limits access for certain people who might want it, and it makes it to where the financial threshold is higher, where basically you need more money, more time, more ability to transport yourself, all these things to get it. But if you said, hey, Dylan, this is the compromise you have to make in order for us to move past the abortion issue, I'd be like, whatever. It's but that's the thing is, for me, it's not a million people dying, right? So if in 2020, like, could you get past that and just say, listen, I'm good, we can cut it off there? If you were like the Republican Party leader and you could just make that call and say, listen, guys, this is settled, we're moving on.
I don't think I could.
Yeah?
I really don't. I mean, that the American in me wants to say, yeah, I mean, that eliminates all these other problems for the most part. So, yes, but I don't feel like I would be able to do it, man. I don't feel like I'd be able to go through with it because it's so vital to me. Like, I mean, listen, if you have an abortion, I don't think that means you're a baby killer. There's a level to this that's like, I mean, like, if we look at it in terms of law, like murder in the first degree, what that means is it was premeditated, correct?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people are ignorant to why we believe what we believe, and because of the team ideologies, it makes us seem like we're the bad guy. But what I look at it as is, I would like to save a life if I can, more so than you're killing babies.
Well, that's the problem, right? Is as soon as you have one party who's running on abortion, one party who's running against it, the first thing that happens is the person who's running against it says, "You're a baby killer. Right. Fuck you. Nobody should vote for you."
And that's wrong, because it's also like we're already here, right? We've already seen abortions for. I don't remember a time when it wasn't. I don't know what year that came into effect, but either way, like I don't know a world without it, really. You know what I mean? So what I can do is I can say that, as far as me and mine goes, we believe in these principles, we believe in this morale, and we're not going to do that. And the rest of the country can benefit.
Do you think it should be made illegal? Like, do you think that's something the state should mandate?
I would like to see it illegal, but not be. I would like to see it illegal, but not be the one that has to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because that makes you sound like if you're the one that pulls the trigger. The issue that most Christians have, I think, is that it became a thing, right? Like, why would it become a thing? Why should it become a thing? I am firmly against it. I do not like it. And I do think that it's murder. However, it depends on where your mental state is when you do it. I think that a lot of women do use it as a form of birth control. Those women, I would say that's you're killing the baby. But a lot of girls, a lot of young women do it, and I don't even think that they realize that how deep it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. A big problem I have, though, is on one hand, you have conservatives who say no abortions at all costs, whatever, but they're not offering a solution, right? They're not saying
there has to be one.
I respect,
because it's here. We have to have a solution. We can't just say no.
You can't ban abortion and try to get rid of all sex ed or get rid of all Planned Parenthood, where they're offering contraceptives and stuff like that. You have to make a choice, right? You have to offer a solution, because otherwise, you have to build something. You can't just destroy everything and make everything illegal, right? You have to offer a solution to the problem.
Yeah, and I think that even with our politicians now, like let's say Trump and let's say all the people, like the runners against, like whoever, like politicians, our next politicians are probably going to be the same way. Where now our politicians are more so just doing what you were talking about earlier in the discussion, where it's just like, you're a baby killer. No, I'm not. And it's like this back and forth.
You hate gays and you hate black people.
Right. How long before there's no solutions to anything anymore? It becomes a popularity contest where it's just.
Well, that's what it is. That's part of my problem is it's just a popularity contest based on the three biggest talking points that you can scream at each other, and we can't get over that. To where I think that it should be illegal for Congress people to trade stocks. Hell, I think a lot. I mean, I don't think a lot of it's technically illegal, but Trump has made so much fucking money as the president. I mean, he's doubled his net worth. He's made like $3 or $4 billion or whatever it is at this point, just being the president. That like these are issues we should be concerned about. Like we should be concerned about like, are Congress people being bribed potentially with like Bitcoin and
these are these are things that I've never even thought about.
This is like super potentially important shit that we're like so far away from.
Yeah, no, I agree, because of the same three topics that you're talking about. And at the same time, I think that the majority of us, unlike me and you that can sit down and have a conversation, the majority of people out there would say those three topics will eliminate the possibility of me even being an acquaintance, let alone a friend, let alone somebody to build with, to structure with. Whereas I believe in community. I believe in the effort of a village raising children together. I believe that, and ultimately you can go and find you a place wherever you want to, like for the majority of middle class, you can go find you a place that you want to be where you can kind of create this community effort if it's not existent already, or you can maybe join this community effort. There's probably something like it near you somewhere where it wouldn't be such a headache to get away from. However, I think that community for all of America needs to be open to all. It doesn't need to be shut out and excluding you because you have a different political mindset than me. And if
that's how people are tribal. Like that's just.
But if it's a different morale than you have from me, you wouldn't want to join my community anyway. But if it's a different morale set than you have from me, let's stop. I think that we should stop pinpointing that in with politics.
Well, no, politics is downstream from morality. Like
today?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, there's definitely overlap. There's definitely like Venn diagrams of politics and morality. Where if you think that it's immoral to misgender people, you're not a conservative, probably.
If you think it's immoral to misgender people.
Somebody.
Yeah, okay.
Or if you think it's immoral to be gay, you're probably a conservative.
That leaves people like me in shambles, though, Ben, because like that's the reason why I can't. Not that, because let me rephrase that. I'm not gonna. Let's stay on abortion. I'm not gonna say that I believe abortion is fine for anybody. I'll never say it. However, that should not group me in as a conservative, because I also don't agree with a lot that the conservatives do.
Well, okay, here. So if you think the government should make abortion illegal, you're probably a conservative.
I don't understand why can't I just be a Christian?
Well,
because I also, like, I'll be upfront, I'll be honest about it. This isn't something, if any of my YouTube people come over here and watch this, they might get mad, but I also don't, for instance, like, you are probably a conservative if you feel like what Trump's doing with immigration is the right thing to do, right? But I feel like in my heart of hearts that he's going about this the utter wrong way, and it's not what I voted for. I voted for him to get rid of criminals, where you might say, bro, we knew that this is what he was going to do. I look at the situation like, no, he sold me a cake.
Which even Joe Rogan is doing that shit where he's like, he thinks it's heartless and all that. Have you seen that?
No.
Where there's like whole controversy with him where he's like, anybody with a heart knows that this is wrong. He said it was going to be criminals type shit.
But, well, this is the technicality. They're criminals because they came here illegally. I was mind tricked by that because I thought he meant like war crimes. That's what it was sold to me. That's what I wanted to vote for. I was like, yeah, bro, if there's terrorists in here, we got to get all of them out. But for the lady that worked 25 years at the candy store, pays taxes, and built a life, what are we doing?
I completely agree.
As Christians. Yeah. Now, I'm talking about my Christian people out there. What are we doing? That's not it, bro. And that's why I can't really align myself with conservativeship. Now, do I think that, do I think it's wrong for the political side of, like, this is my thing, right? Like, if you're not a Christian, you might be ignorant to it. So do I think it's wrong for the conservatives to do this? I don't know. I felt like I was tricked. I'm just being honest. I felt like I was tricked. I felt like this was war criminals and terrorists and people that like made weapons of mass destruction. I thought those were the people that we were getting out of here, right?
Not
the enemy from
Home
within,
Depot.
right?
Yeah.
The Christian in me says, if we can help people have better lives, then we should try. I don't know what that looks like on the grand scale. I don't know what it looks like when you open the floodgates for 4 years and let millions of people come over here, right? I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. I don't have a prescription here. All I know is that I felt like I got tricked, and that makes me feel like when I see conservatives, and I don't think it's wrong for the conservatives to cheer this on if that's what they voted for. I just feel like that's not what I voted for. You know what I'm saying? So I don't necessarily think if you voted for that and you're enjoying it, I don't think you're wrong for that. But if you identify as a Christian, what are you doing? You're dead wrong. Like, that's not what Jesus would want. Jesus would not want you to come and strip somebody.
They would say Jesus wants you to follow the rules and do things the right way and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out and whatever.
That's not Jesus, man.
Well, we got sidetracked a little bit, but I definitely think politics and morality are intertwined in a lot of ways. Where you're gonna join the political group that most aligns with your morality, and reflects your morality most, and builds it into that. And then you might change over time. Where obviously there's been a lot of political changes in the country over the past like 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. But if you think that white people are evil or whatever, crazy far lefty people think, and that they're inherently colonizers and we need to do all this other crazy bullshit, then you're not a fucking conservative.
Well, let's get into it. Why do you think that conservatives want all those people gone? Do you think this is where I'm going to try to save them a little bit of grace. Do you think it's because they're racist, or do you think that they actually think that they're having their jobs and their kids' jobs, and do you think that they actually think that it's causing an issue because that's what they've been sold? They've been sold they're stealing your jobs,
Well, no, I think conservatives just, oh man. See, we talked about this a little bit on your podcast where can be a situation where, something might be green and one side looks at it and sees that says it looks red and the other says it looks blue. Mm-hmm. It's like the Taylor Swift thing where, two different complete perspectives on one thing that is a real factual thing, or I guess it's not factually that, but it is a real thing that can be looked at and we can evaluate it, and somehow they're looking at and seeing two completely different things. Personally, I would just say that I think most conservatives don't really understand how economics works and how things like that will eventually benefit them in the long run. I mean, you have people who live 20 minutes away from us, where there's a big car plant that was built, and they're bitching about it. They're talking about, oh, this doesn't affect me. It's just going to make traffic worse, and blah, blah, blah. And now my property taxes are getting more expensive because they're buying a bunch of houses, which, first off, like, your property value going up is fucking dope. Like, you're making a bunch of money. And second off, which we had a conversation about this ages ago, it's not sidetracked, but there are homestead exemptions where it helps your taxes if you live there. So that guy was full of shit. Right. But that's a complete aside. If there's a ton of people moving to your area, that leads to new development. And, I mean, he had a small business, so he's going to see more customers because of all these people. But they don't think like that. I was talking to my girlfriend, and she said all these old people, they bitch about property taxes going up. Mm-hmm. But especially as an old person, God knows you want better, which property taxes, for anybody who doesn't know, pays for schooling. So as an old person, if I'm an old guy, I want the best schooling possible so someone can figure out how to make me not fucking die for as long as possible, right?
Right.
Or hopefully I have grandkids who I want to take care of their schooling for. But that's the thing is, I think a lot of conservatives that have this like zero-sum game thing where they think like minus one job for Mexicans getting one job is minus one job for me. But like if a Mexican moves here and gets a job, that Mexican is buying stuff, they're eating, they're living somewhere. So all of those individual times they spend money is like 0.0001% of a job for somebody else. So by the time you get a bunch of Mexicans here, that's a bunch more jobs that cascade open, right?
Let's say that they're working for a little bit cheaper on your homes, but then you complain about the home prices whenever they're all gone. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about, where you actually have to have nuanced conversations about.
Just an anecdote on that. I had lunch with my girlfriend's dad. He's steel contracting something or other, and he was talking about how where they live back in the day there was nothing, and then they did all the steel contracting for all these builds, and there were just a bunch of Mexican dudes who he literally said without them none of this would be here. And he is a big Trump guy, evidently, which I've not had a conversation with him about it, but big Trump guy. So like there's a lot of these things that people in their brains, like, it's just disconnected from the politics. Like they see Trump said this is bad, and they don't like critically engage with it to think like, and I don't know why that is. I mean, I know so many people like that who like they know better, but because like in their brain they have a barrier between politics and the rest of the world. Like you have like these nurses who are like crazy anti-vax because they've heard these weird conspiracy theories, but like I'm sure they've given tons of these vaccines, and it's not like, especially if you look at the data, it's not like, there's tons of people showing back up at each of these clinics. You'd think based on the way you see on fucking like Joe Rogan's podcast and all this shit, where they talk about vaccine injuries, you'd think like 10% of the people are coming back and their arms are falling off.
Right.
Or whatever the fuck is happening, right?
I know
but these nurses don't see that, but somehow they still don't input that data into their calculation and be like, oh, well, he must be wrong or misinformed or lying because this is not what I see. Somehow it's just in separate areas of their brain.
And I think a lot of the issue too, man, is that whether you're conservative or whether you're, more so with conservatives, I think the conservatives have lost their faith and their trust in said statistics, and that's an issue too. I mean, all of this is stuff that needs to be focused on, and in order to get to a place where we can split the difference.
Oh my God, no. I'm surprised it took us an hour.
In order for us to get to a place where we can split the difference, where we can meet in the middle,
and just agree on reality.
Yeah, I think that we got to let our guard down, guys. I think that you got to quit getting mad at me for having an opinion, and I think that if you're a conservative and you're a Christian, and not lose your mind whenever I say something as little as I think that the way that we're getting rid of these immigrants is crazy, and that's not the way that I thought we were going to attack it, and not what I wanted.
Well, and I'm sure it would have happened the other way, but when we had our conversation, we did it live, which was a mistake because it got sidetracked by me reacting to chat. But, I mean, shit, people were instantly fucking triggered. They're talking about, oh, there's 2 liberals on screen and we can't watch this shit and blah, blah.
She apologized.
It was multiple people. You know, they're like, this guy's a pussy. He's whipped by his girlfriend. My girlfriend's a Trump voter.
And they also said that was actually meant for me.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
No way.
That's what they said in the chat.
That you were pussy whipped?
Mm-hmm.
No way.
Yeah. I mean, they have seen videos of me and Lindsay, but...
You know who it was that commented that? And that's... Oh.
Nope. I just heard other people that were like, we actually thought he meant that about you.
Oh. But that's a common trope. That's like a super common conservative talking point, is that liberal guys are only liberal because they're trying to get like liberal pussy.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I'm sure
Maybe
he meant
so.
me. They probably just misinterpreted
Maybe so.
it.
I hope so, man.
But, yeah.
I wear the pants in my relationship.
We should actually talk about that at some point, because I think we do have 2 different takes on how, I guess, the household should be structured.
Yeah, I'm a super red pillar.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm not a red pillar, but I do believe. Next time.
We lost our train of thought.
We'll save that note because we are at about an hour, and we do need to kind of work our way out of here, or else people aren't going to watch it.
Yep.
Not about it being late. I could talk with you all night. It's just about y'all don't want to watch this past no hour, and we got to leave you one more.
Yeah. Well, it was fun. I don't know. Hopefully we gave people a lot of stuff to think about.
I hope so. I enjoyed this one way more than I enjoyed the first one, so hopefully y'all will receive it a lot better than the first one was received, even though I still like the first one. I think the first one was good. If you haven't seen it, head over to my channel, Thoughts of a Predicate Winner. It's under the live, a conversation with my liberal friend. Oh, man, dude. I loved it. I thought it was great, but people thought I was an idiot, But I just thought it was a great conversation, and I think that people were looking for a debate. So I hope that y'all don't make the same mistake by thinking that that's what this is. It's not what this is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't know. I do want to get into stuff. Like, I think the mask mandate, I was surprised when we talked a little bit a few days ago, how, like, strong a position you have. I think the problem is, and I wanted to talk about this earlier as well, is... you have, I think, a little bit of a right-leaning bend, and I have like I'd say I'm like moderate left.
Yeah.
So we are probably on average going to lean like a little bit left, but I do try to like evaluate everything from an objective point of view. Like and I'll start off next one with some concessions and where I think like the Democrats are like going wrong.
I'll do the same.
That's a little teaser.
I'll do the same where I feel like Trump is going wrong, man, because I can do it.
It's not hard these days.
Yeah. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, man. This is Split the Difference, and we will see you on the next one. Like and subscribe, boy. Peace.